we talked Banjo-Kazooie, Tooie, DK64, these really great games that were collect-a-thons. How would you describe that genre of game?
Okay, so 3D platformer is sort of the general term that they give to games that are like move around a character in a 3D space, jumping. That's essentially all you need. That could be a 3D platformer. Bubsy 3D could be a 3D platformer. Spyro the Dragon's a 3D platformer. The term collectathon really, I think it relates just to the sheer amount of stuff you need to grab in a game. It's the primary focus. Mario 64, I would probably describe as a collectathon as well because it's got 120 stars to collect. You have to find a certain item. You have to collect a bunch. It's not the only item though. There's usually other items that you also collect, like coins. So collectathon usually applies to more than one item. So if there's an objective, that's a little different. But you could have a 3D platformer and it not be a collectathon. Like Sonic Adventure is the game that's coming off the top of my head. You have rings that you can get, but it's not really a collectathon. I would describe that as a 3D platformer leaning toward an action adventure game. There's sort of like all these subgenres of games. You can kind of mishmash them, but collectathon is that's the best one. That's the best genre. It's just a lot of fun. But yeah, Banjo, Conquer, see Diddy Kong Racing I was about to say, but it's not. It's sort of a collectathon, but that's also a racer. It's not a 3D platformer collectathon. So it'd be like a racing collectathon. So collectathon almost has an additional context plus 3D platformer, if that makes sense. If you're following my train of thought.
Oh, no, no, I definitely am. And it seems like this time period of when the N64 initially came out and these earlier, I don't, well, not earlier, but like late 90s rare games, um, they were producing some like just classics, some classic collectathons. I know Super Mario 64 as well, that's separate, but is there anything special about like that particular time period when this console came out that you had just some great collectathons? And maybe, I know like today you still do, like I really like Super Mario Odyssey. I know that came out
Hmm.
a few years ago, but it seemed like that time period was a really special time for this genre. I don't know if you think there was anything particular about that time period that made it that way, or
Yes, there is. I'd probably say one of the things is experimentation, where they really were sort of figuring out early 3D mechanics. And so that created sort of variation between all these different 3D collectathons, because Mario does not feel like Banjo, even though conceptually wise they're fairly similar. They don't feel the same. They feel totally different. Mario feels a little more athletic, like he's flipping around, he's moving really quickly. Banjo feels more precise and intentional about your movement, right? But there's also like a catch 22 to that because I think the success of Mario 64 and then the success of Banjo, those two 3D platformers really shot the genre like up. And so you have a bunch of other people trying to do their own spin on a 3D platformer collectathon at that point. Everyone experimenting, everyone trying to mimic the basic formula, but then putting their own twist on it. So you get games like Rayman 2, which are phenomenal. You get games, unfortunately, like Earthworm Jim 3D, which should have been a banger, but it just wasn't. But your mileage may vary with the different kinds that are sort of in that 3D platforming collectathon genre. But what made it special was the fact that they were experimenting, they were trying. So for every gem, there's probably 10 bad ones. Maybe not that many, but you know, but the gems that were gems were real gems. Like they are games that you can pick up and play today, and they're still fantastic. And that's not even just limited to the 3D collectathon. I think it also expands into like Zelda Ocarina of Time. That Zelda games really didn't change that much until Breath of the Wild sort of restructured the formula. Otherwise, it was pretty much what the N64 established. And I think that's sort of a trend with gaming. It's like they find something that works and then they do it for a long time. That's why I'm no longer interested in Call of Duty games. They're all the same. I'm sorry. If Call of Duty's your thing, great. It's not mine anymore. I loved it back in the day. Now it just feels like rinse and repeat. You got to do something special. But it's sort of like that era, that 90s, mid 90s, they're experimenting. They're going all over the place. They're doing different things, throwing stuff at the wall, seeing what sticks. And I think that's what makes it special. I think that's what makes it a special era. If you look at the early 2000s, even, we're sort of pushing into that territory where they kind of know what works. And so you get a lot of games that maybe functionally are good, but they feel sort of bland. They don't have that sort of special twist. And that's something that I appreciated about Rare too, was that their games always felt unlike everybody else's. They were just over the top silly, over the top cartoony. Hey, let's put googly eyes on this because we think it's funny. They're just having fun. You can feel that they were having fun making these games as much as you're having fun playing these games. And there's a couple titles that weren't on the 64 that were really good. And they're like 3D platform, like Spyro the Dragon comes to mind. That's an absolute classic. And it's also silly. It's also 3D. It feels so different than Mario. Like it's a totally different game, but conceptually it's still a 3D platformer collect-a-thon. And yeah, I just think experimentation and trying different things and avenues and seeing what sticks when you throw it at the wall. That's what made that era really special. And that's kind of just true for the 90s. Like it's not even just like platformers. Like it's just true for the that whole decade. They were just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. See-through Pepsi? Sure. I don't know. 3D Doritos? Why not? Like let's see what happens. We've lost that.